And so with that, we do move on to the Wkce report, and Ms. Sparish is here to update us on that.
Well, I want to thank you because I don't have to give the report. Thank you very much. I'm done. I agree with everything you said. Those little things do make a difference. In the packet of information that you received, you should have received 3 charts or graphs that I had put in there. One is the Toma School District Wkce summary from 2010-11, and then the summary from 2011-12, and then there's some scale score charts that I'll be talking about. Looking first at those summary charts, and I've included last year's and this year's to give you an idea of where we're going. On those charts, you can see the percentage of students that scored advanced and proficient on the Wkce. You will also see the state average of students scoring advanced and proficient. And you will also see something called Annual Measurable Objectives, otherwise AMOs. Annual Measurable Objective for 2010-11 was 80.5 for reading, and for math was 68.5. In 2011-12, those jumped to 87% advanced and proficient for reading and 79% advanced and proficient for math. What is an annual measurable objective? Back when No Child Left Behind was first introduced, the state of Wisconsin had to set a standard of where they wanted students at. If you remember way back when No Child Left Behind started, Wisconsin set their standards low. And they left them kind of low for a few years. They increased them slightly, left in that area for a few years, increased them again ever so slightly. And now that we are approaching that magical year of 2014 coming in just a few years, they are increasing significantly in the next 3 years. Wisconsin, when they did this, was hoping that No Child Left Behind would be reauthorized by this point. It hasn't been at this point. So we're going to see those significant areas increasing. Green is good, yellow is not so good. As you can see, our scores this year, we have significantly more yellow than we did in previous years. That does not surprise me, does not really alarm me, does not mean I'm happy. I would like to see more green. However, when you see that significant of a jump in the annual measurable objectives, you will see less green areas or less areas that we need. Going from 80% to 87% is a significant jump. Going from 68.5% math to 79% is a significant jump. So I would anticipate that we will see more. If you also look at that and do some analysis of that, you will see that the state average in reading in all grade levels, with the exception of the 10th grade, has dropped from 2010-11 to 2011-12. Math, it has gone up in some areas and down in some areas, but very close to a stagnant line. So we're not seeing growth in the state of Wisconsin as much as they anticipated. Looking at these charts, everybody wants to see advanced and proficient. Everybody wants to know how we are doing on that because that's what we're judged on and held accountable to. But these charts really do not give you the clear picture of if our students are learning or not. Because students on this, we can have students that are in the minimal category, minimal, basic, proficient, and advanced. We can have students in the minimal category that are growing, that are learning, but they're not moving out of that minimal category. Or we have students that are in the basic category and they're not moving over to proficient, so they will not show up on those charts. Okay? And because of that, I tend to look at the scale scores to show if students are learning. Scale scores are units of single, equal, interval scales that are applied to the Wkce. Scale scores are expressed in numbers from 0 to 999. They're based on correct responses, taking into account item difficulty. They have discrimination indexes, and also play into it the factor for guessing on a selective response. The equal interval property of this allows you to be able to add and subtract and average these scores and show growth of students or individual students or groups of students over the years. So that's why the charts that Mrs. Zardi has up there at this point shows clearly that our students are learning. The blue is the Toma students and the red is the state of Wisconsin. As you can see in the class of 2014 in reading, those lines are molding together. So we are clearly staying with the state average, what the other schools in the state are doing, and that trend line is an upward trend line. So our students are learning. I don't believe there's any scores in there that are in a downward trend line. We are showing that our students are growing. So with that in mind, we're not probably where we want to be with advanced and proficient, but our students are learning. The problem comes into now that we don't know if we met AYP or not met AYP, because that's changing, which brings us into the next thing, the report card. So I don't know if you have questions about the scores before I get into that. Good, thank you. That was good. Part of the state of Wisconsin is applied for an ESEA, Elementary Secondary Education Act waiver, to try to get us out of some of the requirements of the No Child Left Behind legislation. Part of that is that we have to have some raised expectations. They're doing this because of also when we go to the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which will be in 2014-15, which will take the place of Wkce, it's a much higher standard. So the state of Wisconsin already is planning for that. They are now looking at the report card, which will be coming out, and I'll get to that here. But they're looking at not using advanced and proficient as our cut score, but looking at using the National Association of Educational Progress test score as a cut score. Now, with that in mind, you remember that chart that had all the yellow on there? That's advanced and proficient. And to give you a high idea of where the NAEP score, National Association of Educational Progress, is, it's only the advanced category. So that's how much higher this standard is going to be. Okay. Part of the waiver also will be looking at the Explore Plan and ACT as a package for middle and high school levels, increasing some of the graduation requirements, but getting to this accountability system. As you can see in the upper right-hand corner there, those areas will form an accountability index, which will replace the ESEA, Adequate Yearly Progress, which we don't like that term. There will be multiple measures that will be playing into this, such as the student achievement, student growth, closing the achievement gap, and then, Cindy, you have the high school up there, okay. So you won't see student growth on the high school one, that will be on the K-8 one. And then closing the achievement gap, and then on track for graduation. Now, you're probably asking, how does that all figure out? I don't think the state has that all worked out yet, because they're still developing how it all will play into it. There's value-added responses into it, and all of that index has not been finalized yet. The scores will be in those 4 categories. If we do well in those 4 categories, the box directly below that, you can see test participation, dropout rate, and absenteeism. If we meet all of those areas, whatever standard they have set for the state, we then will get what our report card will look like, and we will then fall into the left-hand side where that big number 82 is. That will be what we'll see. 82 is 82 out of 100, and you can see then that you will either meet expectations, exceed expectations in that area. If you have any areas with a red flag, you automatically cannot get higher than meeting some expectations. Now the good news is the red flags fall in absenteeism, dropout rates, and test participations. TOMA has always been very good in those areas. Okay, so I'm hoping we don't see a red flag, but I'm not sure where we're going to fall on the continuum on the left-hand side. Directly below that, you see the chart there with some numbers. That was where a big concern that I had, because if we go with the Wkce now, you'll see those way very high, and then this year you'd see a significant drop. The good news is the state is converting back all of those 5 years to the new standard, so you will see a logical growth, not this big jump and then all of a sudden a big drop. Okay. Originally, the report card was tied only to Title I schools. It is not tied only to Title I schools. Every school in the state will be receiving a report card this June, and the schools will get it in June, and in August it will go public. There is some sanctions tied to the Title I yet. If we are labeled a priority school, which is I think the bottom 5% in the state, we would have to go through some procedures with an improvement plan. Or if we're focused where the subgroups are not showing enough growth, we would have to go through a procedure with that to show growth on that. So at this point, I don't have all the answers for the report card, but you're getting to see a draft of the report card. And hopefully in June, we will be able to see that as a district. Excuse me, they are school report cards. District ones will not come out until next year. So we'll be able to see each school one, be able to formulate how we want to present that to the public when we have that information. We have all summer to do that.
Oh, there's a lot there.
Isn't it? You know, I'm so glad I get to follow the positive Friends of Education, and then I get to talk about test scores. Thank you, guys.
I don't know where to start or end with all of that. It's the standards change, and we knew with the WKCE and No Child Left Behind, I mean, that was, all the schools knew that they were changing the expectations, and that was going to change the way you looked. Now I'm just trying to figure out next year, how we're going to be graded. Will we be going from the WKCE to the NAEP this coming?
We will still be using WKCE, but they will use the NAEP cut scores on the WKCE. We will continue to use WKCE until the Smarter Balanced Assessment comes out, and that will be in the spring of 2015. So the school year of 2014-15, WKCE will be no more. We will convert it into Smarter Balanced.
Okay. And then when this will go in, the new report cards will be in effect as in this coming year?
As of June of this year, we will see them, yes.
And so each of our schools will get one of these school ratings, and then eventually the school district will get...
Yes, my understanding is the school district will get a rating next year. They don't have those out. They were not planning on rolling these out until next year, but in order to get the waiver to go through, they had to have it in place this year. Otherwise, the waiver would not go through, and we'd have another year before we could get released from the 85 or 87%, which next year I think is over 90% reading.
So as we try to come to grips with how we're performing, what should we focus on at this point?
I think what we're doing in this district is what we need to be doing. We're putting things into place, and such as Daily 5 at the elementary school will help kids be self-sufficient learners. You're looking at math expressions in the elementary. It helps kids to take charge of their own learning. If you look at the Smarter Balanced Assessment, it's no longer just a multiple choice test. It's performance-based. So it's really now we're getting to taking the knowledge that kids learn and being able to apply it. Okay. If any of you ever want to see some of the sample examples, I'll be happy to show you some of those. They're actually quite interesting and
extremely difficult.
Extremely difficult is, yes, very good analogy there, because they are. But it gets kids to think. We're no longer just looking at, let me guess on the answer, but using the higher order thinking skills of Bloom's taxonomy, and then the depth of knowledge to get kids to be able to apply that information, not just give you a simple answer, but take a step by step. I think some of the things that we've done at the high school with adding AP classes gets kids to increase that rigor. What the work we've done with the Common Core State Standards, also purchasing the Curriculum Companion, which is a new curriculum software that we will be using, has unpacked those standards, will make it easier for teachers to understand exactly what they need to be teaching, not how they're teaching, but what they need to be teaching and what kids need to understand and know and be able to do. So I think we've got some things in place. The problem comes in, none of this is a quick fix. What Mr. Buss has done tonight, and throughout the year, those little things will make a difference. I will never stand up here and say we need to put all our eggs in the basket of the WKCE. What we need to put our emphasis on is quality classroom instruction. And I think, we have done those things here in Tomah since I've been here. And I credit Cindy as a great instructional leader for driving that. It's all instructional focus. So I think with those things in place, you're going to see changes, but it will take some time.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
I would recommend that we have a board retreat that focuses just on some of this information so that we can explain it more fully, so that you can look at some of those smarter balanced assessment items so you get a sense of what is happening in terms of accountability for both students and for teachers, because as these scores will play a role in teacher effectiveness and their evaluations. So perhaps this summer we can find a evening where we could spend some time just to deal with this topic. And I think one of the things that Ms. Barish mentioned is, you know, DPI is about 3 steps ahead of everybody else. I mean, they're mapping this out and getting it done, you know, they're not very far into the process. They're kind of going day by day and getting stuff out to us, so we're continually getting additional information. It's important that we stay on top of this. But again, I think we are putting all the pieces in place that will help our teachers be successful in instructing our students and then helping our students be successful on the measures that are going to be used. But I'd also like to point out that I think it's real important that remember that we are dealing with human beings and that a test is one measure of who they are. And I think our school district has been committed over the years to ensuring that our young people that graduate are well educated, but that they're also individuals of character. They've had broad experiences in extracurricular. They have leadership skills, all of those things that don't necessarily measure on an academic test. And while we want them to do very well academically, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that these are young people that we're working with, and we're doing our very best to help them be very well-rounded and successful in all areas of being a human being.
You also have to realize WKC is one test, one day. A kid has it for a day, they don't get a chance to retake that. Now with the Smarter Balanced Assessment, there is a plan that if we feel a kid does not score well enough, we will have like within 6 weeks to allow them to take that test again. And I think that's fair, because there are some days that you don't feel well, or some days that things aren't going well for you, that to take a test like of that nature, you're not getting a true reflection of what that kid is.
Okay. I think we all know that enough about WKCE to be able to put it into perspective, but still it is a standard by which we are measured, and we have to be responsive to that. And if whatever standard's being applied, we're not scoring as high as we want to, we don't want to overreact, but we still have to be accountable to it. And so I think the idea of a retreat where we all become very proficient in knowing how we're being judged and how we want to address that is a good idea.
Can I give them the Smarter Balanced Assessment then?
I think we should all work on taking a few of those problems.
Now, last year, didn't the teachers get together too and look at all these and evaluate everything, and that will happen again?
Yes, actually on June 4th or 5th, I can't remember the exact date, our IAC committee, they've been giving these reports plus some additional ones, and we will look at analyzing that to see if there's anything that we need to change in our plan to move forward, keep us progressing forward. So, and we actually then also will look at some subgroups like special education, our students with disability, and then also economically disadvantaged students also.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.